Their planes were made of nothing more than plywood and canvas, so fragile the Germans mockingly called them flying coffins. They flew at night with no parachutes, no radios, and no radar to guide them, just a map and a compass. These pilots would become so feared that a new name for them was whispered in the dark on the front lines, the Night Witches. This is the incredible story of how a group of young women, most barely out of their teens, took outdated crop dusters and turned them into one of the most effective weapons of World War II. By 1941, the Soviet Union was in a desperate situation. Hitler's invasion had shattered the Red Army, and the country was scrambling. All across the USSR, letters started flooding in from women, many of them trained pilots, all demanding a chance to fight. But at the time, a woman's place just wasn't seen as being on the front lines. One woman, though, wasn't taking no for an answer. Her name was Marina Raskova, a famous aviator often called the Soviet Amelia Earhart. She used her celebrity and direct access to Joseph Stalin to push for an all-female fighting force. Finally, on October 8, 1941, Stalin gave the order. 3 all-female air regiments would be created, making the Soviet Union the first nation in history to establish official all-female combat aviation units. Raskova handpicked her recruits from thousands of applicants. The majority were students, some as young as 17, who were now expected to learn in a few months what male pilots took years to master. The most famous of these new units would be the 588th Night Bomber Regiment. In this regiment, every single job belonged to a woman, from the pilots and navigators to the mechanics and ground crew. They were handed ill-fitting male uniforms and boots so large they had to stuff them with their own bedding to walk. They were constantly belittled by male soldiers, who dismissed them as little girlies and doubted they could ever really fight. They were about to prove everyone wrong. The plane they were given was the Polikarpov Po-2, a biplane so old it was mostly being used for training pilots and dusting crops. Built from plywood and canvas, it offered almost zero protection. A single tracer bullet could turn the whole thing into a fireball. The cockpit was open to the elements, meaning the pilots were constantly exposed to brutal freezing temperatures that led to frostbite. The plane could only carry 2 bombs at a time, tucked under its wings. To make any real difference, crews had to fly mission after mission, night after night, sometimes 8 or more before sunrise. To make matters worse, they often flew without parachutes. This was a tactical choice to save weight and carry more bombs, but it meant that if you were hit, there was absolutely no escape. What seemed like a weakness, the women made their greatest strength. The Po-2's top speed was actually slower than the stall speed of the German fighter planes, making the Night Witches incredibly difficult to target. Flying exclusively at night, they perfected a chilling tactic. They'd approach their target in a group before one pilot would cut her engine entirely, gliding silently over the enemy position. Soldiers below would hear only a faint whooshing sound, like a witch's broomstick, just moments before bombs destroyed their camp. This silent, deadly approach earned them their famous nickname from the terrified German soldiers, Nachthexen, or the Night Witches. The psychological impact was huge. It's often said that any German pilot who shot down a Night Witch was automatically awarded the Iron Cross. While that's likely a legend, the fact that the story even exists shows you just how much these women were feared. From 1942 to the end of the war, the Night Witches flew over 24,000 combat missions, dropping 3,000 tons of bombs on enemy targets. They harassed German troops, blew up supply depots, and made sure the soldiers on the ground never got a moment's rest. The stories of their survival are incredible. One of the most famous pilots, Nadezhda Popova, once returned from a mission with 42 bullet holes in her plane and even her helmet, yet she was completely unharmed. By the war's end, the regiment was one of the most highly decorated female units in the Soviet Air Force. 32 of its members had died in combat, but 23 were awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, the nation's highest honor. Despite their unbelievable record, the Night Witches Regiment was disbanded soon after the war ended. They weren't even invited to the main victory parade in Moscow, the official reason being that their planes were simply too slow to fly alongside the other aircraft. For decades, their story of fighting against all odds was largely forgotten by the rest of the world. But these women who flew flying coffins into the heart of a war zone did more than just hunt Nazis. They shattered stereotypes and proved that true courage has no gender. They were the ghosts of the front line, the masters of the night, the legendary night witches. If you found this story of bravery as incredible as we did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. What other unsung heroes from World War II deserve to have their story told? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.